everyone. I am so glad that you're joining us today. We have a super special guest that I'm so excited to go over this topic. I'm here with Dr. Kori Propst. She is amazing on our Diet Doc team, our psychologist. Like, she's just amazing, and I love having her. I love talking to her. She's so great in depth with explaining things and just talking about everything. So today we're going to go over a very important topic that I don't feel like a lot of people really talk about. And that's those who struggle with being anorexic or bulimic, and how to, not only if you have that, how to handle that, how to other people, and just there's so many different parts to it that I really want to touch base and go over. So welcome to the show. So glad you're here.
Thank you. No pressure. No pressure. We're just gonna have a conversation, right, Tanya?
Right.
And we'll do our best to articulate kind of what the situation is and how best we can help those who are suffering with eating disorders and those who love them and care about them and who may not have even broached the subject with people that they maybe think might have an eating disorder. Like, there are so many different variables and different directions we could go in with this. So we'll do our best to skim the surface as best we can and help people.
Yeah, so let's dive into that. You had mentioned there's different ways that we can go. What are some things people can look out for?
Well, I think first maybe it would help just to understand what an eating disorder is. And eating disorders can look a lot of different ways. And you mentioned anorexia, you mentioned bulimia, but the most common eating disorder, Tanya, aren't either of those two. It's binge eating disorder.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's orthorexia as well.
Yep.
And so these are mental and physical illnesses, but anorexia specifically has the highest mortality rate of any mental illness.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's really important to understand.
Yeah.
Anorexia specifically, the signs of it can be significant amount of weight loss, although atypical anorexia means that you can have an individual who is in a larger body who still has anorexia. So it's important to know that you cannot assume someone has an eating disorder or know which eating disorder it is by looking at someone.
Oh, I love that you mentioned that. That's amazing.
Yeah, you just can't.
Yeah.
With someone who potentially has anorexia, you might see them dressing in layered clothing, and that can, if they are in a state where their bodies are very, very low weight, to the point, well, let's just look at, I mean, you don't have to be emaciated to be anorexic, but when you have very, very low body fat, it's going to be difficult for you to stay warm. So I had anorexia when I was in college, and this was a symptom of mine too. Constantly cold, couldn't get warm, especially the extremities. But when you don't have the fat layer, this makes sense. So you'll see them oftentimes dressing in layered clothing. Perhaps not surprising, there's a significant preoccupation with food, with weight, with calories, with fat, or with dieting, and refusal to eat foods. With anorexia, there's a significant and persistent food restriction going on. And it's a lot about having a severely distorted body image. So these individuals see themselves as looking in a certain way, and it's not reality.
Yeah.
intense fear of weight gain and fat. You often see them engaging in compulsive exercise. I will say personally that for me, I was very detailed and I was tracking my calories and my food with immense intensity. I was eating, but I was also exercising 3 or 4 times a day for a couple hours. So compulsive exercise is something that you see often. You do have individuals who have anorexia who will also purge though or use laxatives. Mm-hmm. And there is binge type anorexia too. So with that severe restriction, biologically, they're going to be in a place physiologically where the binge happens. Mm-hmm. But again, if you are thinking that someone might, and you're looking for maybe signs or symptoms, these people with anorexia will oftentimes deny their hunger. They feel this very preoccupied need to burn off the calories that they consume. Mm-hmm. They will socially isolate themselves. And so if you notice those sorts of behaviors, like they're acting different than they used to, they're not spending time with family or friends anymore. They have a concern about eating in public. Those are the things to watch out for. But, regardless of what type of eating disorder someone has, support is necessary. We really need to help people find the support that they need, be it depending on the severity of the disorder. Sometimes people need hospitalization because they need to be monitored, and they need nutritional rehabilitation, and they need refeeding, and they need to gain weight. Mm-hmm. In order to restore their physical health. And that's the thing with especially with anorexia treatment. A lot of times insurance companies will pay for treatment until the individual reaches a certain weight. But that doesn't mean that we've dealt with the psychological issues and the emotional issues and all the things that potentially led them there in the first place.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's with anorexia. Now with bulimia, that's when you have an individual who is binge eating on very large amounts of food that anyone else would look at and say, wow, that's abnormal. There's a sense of lack of control that goes along with the binge eating. And then there are compensatory behaviors post-binge to prevent weight gain. And that can look like purging, that can look like the use of laxatives, that can look like compulsive exercise. There are lots of things that fasting, restrictive dieting, choosing not to eat certain food groups, things like that. And oftentimes individuals with bulimia will present with co-occurring disorders. So what that means is you may notice that there are high levels of impulsivity among individuals with like shoplifting. With individuals who have bulimia, there may be a co-occurring like substance abuse disorder. Okay. Or self-injury.
Oh, okay.
And then a lot of the symptoms and the signs, things that people can kind of look for and be careful and aware of, mimic those of individuals with anorexia. There's the isolative behavior, the difference in, changing how they dress in order to hide what's happening. You may notice for people with bulimia, if it's been going on for quite some time, they're going to end up having teeth problems because of the acid from the stomach. They may end up with calluses on their hands from the self-induced vomiting that they're doing. And that individual, you might see really fluctuate in their weight quite a bit. It may be low and then it may be high. And so you can see them yo-yoing quite often. And then with binge eating disorder, which I mentioned is the most common, and that I particularly see a lot with individuals and work with them on. This is where you have recurring binge episodes, again, with a sense of loss of control, significant shame, psychological distress attached to it, a lot of guilt post-binge, but there aren't necessarily compensatory behaviors after. So like with the clients that I'm working with, and this is a positive thing. If individuals are binging, and that may sound strange, if individuals are binging though, and then they're not purging or doing other compensatory behaviors after, what they're doing is, because it's that restriction that can often cause the next binge. It's like putting a cog in the wheel so that they change the binge purge cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we see, and it's interesting because binge eating disorder started really, really ramping up around the same time that the dieting industry started really ramping up also. And we know that biologically, when someone is restricting calories to a degree that is harmful, physiologically the body is going to send out signals to go eat and eat a lot, because it's anticipating a famine. It's very threatening to the body, and it's a survival mechanism. But dieting, really restrictive dieting in particular, can cause a lot of issues, because it disconnects us often from our bodies. We're disconnecting from hunger and fullness cues, and it's almost like we are required to flip a switch in the brain if we're really engaged in restrictive dieting that says, no, you just follow the plan. You don't have to listen to your body in any way. No, what we focus on is the appearance of the body, not what the body needs for like well-being and like overall health. And so, yeah, I'll stop talking. I don't know if you have any questions here, but
I love it. I love it because a lot of people believe that eating disorder is mainly just, like just being anorexic or bulimic or whatever. Also, binge eating is and I was in that category. So I can, like everything you mentioned, I'm like, it's exactly that. And it's the analogy I use with a lot of my clients now is people treat diet like an on and off switch. Oh, I'm on it, let's do it. And then I'm off it and I fall off the wagon. I'm like, burn that wagon. You don't
burn it to the ground. No, we don't need a wagon. No.
You need to, if you're going to use the light switch, you keep that light on all the time. You never turn it off. You do whatever it takes to keep it. You're not allowed to touch you're not allowed to take it off. No, you can't do that. But I love that because it's so true. When we start a diet, it's like we become robots and we follow, I gotta do this workout, I gotta do this plan. I don't even like the meals. I'm not even hungry, or I'm full, but I have to finish it because this is the serving size. And it's like, we're not learning anything and we're doing more harm mentally and physically when we do that. So here's my question for you. Let's say, I'm sure all my listeners, they're in one of those categories or know somebody who is. What is the next step? Because it really sounds a lot of it is mental.
Oh, yeah. Yes, a ton of it is mental and emotional.
Yeah.
And I will say a lot of times, Tanya, what we're dealing with too is an individual who has maybe had a trauma history. And that doesn't mean like big T trauma, like abuse. Trauma can come in small forms, and it can come in micro traumas over the course of of time. It can come in the form of weight stigma. If I live in a larger body, for example, and the built environment does not facilitate, the airplane seat doesn't fit my body. I walk into the doctor's office and the blood pressure cuff won't fit around my arm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a problem. Like, that's oppressive. That is going to cause us stress and harm and ill health. And so the other thing that I'll say is we do live in a culture that perpetuates really unrealistic beauty ideals and the thin ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not worthy unless we measure up to those standards in some way. Right. And I will say that it is body dissatisfaction and really negative body image starts at such a young age for children. You're getting asked questions by clients whose daughters are perhaps like moving from high school to college. Mm-hmm. And that is a very, 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 very precarious time because it's a massive transition. Yeah. It's hugely stressful. Mm-hmm. And eating disorders in many ways, they're not about the food. Mm-hmm. A lot of times they are not about the food. They are a coping mechanism to protect us in times when we don't necessarily have the skills to be able to manage difficult, unpleasant, uncomfortable emotion. Couple that with this culture that we live in that is perpetuating the idea that our bodies are not good enough and we must change them and fix them and make them smaller.
Right. On top of all the stress that we already have.
Right. We need that. We need the quarantine 15 messages that say, on top of everything you're already dealing with, here's another thing to add to your plate.
Yeah.
Be very, 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 very scared about weight gain during this time. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of prevention is really around learning to confront those unrealistic beauty ideals, encouraging a peaceful relationship with food, peaceful relationship with your body, making the focus on what our bodies can do and the utility of our bodies and the functionality of our bodies, body appreciation, like can I appreciate them for all of the ways in which they allow me to live my life versus what they look like and what my appearance is. And that's got to start young, because, you probably have clients who were put on diets at, the age of 5, younger. I certainly do. And how can we not start when we're forced into a position like that at that young of an age? What can we expect?
Right.
At 5 years old, such a vulnerable time, such a ripe time for just absorbing everything around us and the messages that we're hearing and what people are saying and what people are doing to their bodies and what they're looking like. So yeah, we've got to learn how to replace restrictive dieting with more of an intuitive eating sort of a structure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we really teach that in our programs. Mm-hmm. And that's really, I always say that's what saved my life is flexible dieting, because it's the only diet that I don't even consider it a diet. It really taught me to learn about myself and my goals and my body and understanding, like, am I hungry? What does my body need right now? And I go, no other diet has taught me that. And I'm like, I got to share it with the world because it's so much easier. And it helps me have a great relationship with food. And a lot of people, I think I struggled, now that you keep explaining it, and I'm like, wow, I did go, I barely ate food because I was trying to lose weight. And I did 3 or 4 hours of working out after high school. I do remember that because you mentioned that. And I'm like, wow, because I was so stressed out. I didn't have time to eat. And if I did eat, it was like McDonald's, but I remember like just working out like crazy, and then I switched from that to binge eating because I didn't know how to handle stress. And so I gained 50 pounds in less than 2 years. I mean, it was pretty traumatic of how quickly I gained it. I went from being 22 years old to feeling like I was 90. I mean, it was bad. Like my energy, just everything felt awful. And so that's why I'm so passionate about our program, is because it saved me. It helped me overcome so many of my battles, and it helps me more mentally be stronger than any other diet. But I want to go into, I was fortunate enough to learn all this stuff and pass it on to other people. But I would love for people who are listening, where's their hope? How can they, what's their next step? I like to take it one step at a time. If they're dealing with any of those three or know somebody, what's the next step of getting stronger emotionally? Or like you said, maybe it's a stress or trauma that's triggering them. What do they do from there? Where's their hope that things can change, things can get better?
So I firmly believe in full recovery from eating disorders.
Absolutely.
I've fully recovered from an eating disorder. You have too. I've worked with other people who have. It is entirely possible, and it takes support. You need to be ideally within a community and have a team of people surrounding you who are well versed in this and who can help you explore and who can help you take risks and who can help you see the other parts of yourself, because the eating disorder can feel like this dictator that takes over and tells you what to do all the time and will beat you up. You know, I just got off a call prior to doing this with you, Tanya, and that is exactly what we were exploring. You know, a lot of times individuals who engage in disordered eating or have these clinical eating, diagnosable eating disorders have specific personality characteristics, you know, like perfectionism. Yeah. And part of getting better and recovering is about not trying to get rid of these personality characteristics. You know, perfectionism, that I can't extract that from my personality. It's not going anywhere. So how can I learn to use that quality of mine in a positive way that is in my service and towards my healing?
Yeah.
And so you know, we were talking about how, with my client, we were talking about how she has this controller inside of her. You know, most of us have a high need for control if we're struggling with these sorts of things. And I said, you know, you've got a lot of other people inside of you too. Who are they? And she's like, well, and we've done a character strengths assessment together, and her number one character strength is the capacity to love and be loved. And she's like, well, you know, I have this other person inside of me who is very compassionate. And I said, so, you know, it would be really interesting if you and your compassionate advocate and the controller could like have a powwow. Yeah. Let the controller speak, let the compassionate advocate speak, and you're kind of like, you're the chairman. Ultimately, you get to decide, like, you know, whose opinion holds the most weight. And if we're looking at it from the perspective of your long-term health and well-being. And so we used a current situation that she's dealing with, and, you know, the controller gave their opinion and the compassionate advocate gave their opinion. And then she was like, well, I can see both sides. But based on, you know, what I've said I want and how I want to move out of this behavior and do more of that, I'm going to go with the compassionate advocate. And so that's just an example of, man, we have so much inside of us that is untapped and unexplored. And
Yeah.
if we can get support, and we have a team of people, and if that means you're working with a registered dietitian, and you're working with a therapist, and you're working with someone involved in helping you really shift your perception about movement, because, I mean, let's be real, exercise literally becomes fused with fat loss, and it's no longer engaged in because it feels good, right? We have a million rules around why we should and how much and what we should do, and is it intense enough? And it's just like, what if we flipped the switch there too and thought more about how movement can be used to feel good and relieve stress and really become more of a whole human being, and to connect with our bodies instead of, again, just being focused on appearance.
Yeah.
But I'll say this too, Tanya, real fast. You know, if you have questions, and if you want to talk to someone to find out maybe where you should go or who you should talk to, the National Eating Disorders Association is a very good place to start, and they have a hotline. You can do an online chat with them, you can call them on the phone, and they can help you find out resources that are in your area. You can ask them questions. But yeah, I think that the eating disorder treatment field is changing a lot, and this is fortunate because historically a lot of centers, they would have these weight restoration programs, and then on the other floor they would have these obesity and weight maintenance programs. And so you're getting really different messages. And these people all pretty much need the same thing.
Seriously, they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not going to, hopefully, when you're helping someone with anorexia restore weight, you're not going to say, but you should only get to this weight. Once we get to that weight, then we need to be really, really careful. And it's like, yeah, right? Yes. And that's because of the obesity epidemic. That's how things have been going for a long period of time. But there's a big change because of HAES, the Health at Every Size movement, and intuitive eating, and non-diet weight inclusive practitioners. And I mean, just the research that is being done too about how caustic and toxic these messages about body size can be to a person's health.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Goodness. But I want to go back, and I just want to say how your first piece of advice was to get support. And I love that because, and I would encourage, don't just put a deadline on it. Everyone's like, well, I'll just do this for 2 months, or I'll just do this for a couple weeks. Yeah. And I'm like,
it's a long-term game.
It's so much longer than we anticipate. And nobody told me this. Like, nobody told me, hey, Tanya, you have a problem with binge eating that you've been doing 24/7 for the past 2 years. It's going to take longer than a 12-week program or, a couple weeks or a weekend to get over this. And I would say confidently of me intuitively eating and not feeling like food controls me, because I was a slave to food. Like, I thought of it and I had to eat it. Like, there was no way around it.
Yeah.
Or that's how I handled my stress. Or even if I sneezed, I'm like, oh, gotta eat a cookie. Like, every emotion was about food. It was a very
manage this without food.
It was really sad. And one thing that really helped me was my support, 100%. Coaches. People were like, why'd you have so many coaches? I'm like, because I needed professional help. I needed support. I needed somebody to give me that hope of, hey, you're doing great. Let's keep going. Like you said, you can be 100% cured. Like, you can have a full recovery. And for a lot of people, they don't feel like that's ever a possibility because they've lived so long in that state of mind of this is the way of my life. But for me, it really took about 2 years, maybe even 3, to fully, like, I changed my lifestyle from the
Yeah.
inside out. Like, I love my body. So many people are like, your biceps are too big or your thighs are too big. And I'm like, oh, I don't care because it's my body and I love my body. Like, I don't care what you think. And I'm like, this is a great place to be, that I
Wow,
don't care.
Tanya. Yeah, just that sort. We should never be commenting on someone's appearance.
Right. But so comments do
Whoever
that.
said to you your biceps are too big and your legs, your thighs are too big, that's the sort of crap that we need to be teaching young girls and boys, gender, how to manage,
Yeah.
how to resist.
Yeah.
There were plenty of times too when I was younger where people commented, and it's so, if we haven't been taught, or we've been in situations where, you know, maybe we have a family history of disorder dating and we've watched watched a parent or both parents or whoever is, you know, close to us, talk about food in a certain way and talk about their bodies in a certain way and criticize certain things about themselves. We're going to be impacted by that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're absolutely right. I believe in 100% full recovery. And when I say recovery, I mean consistent, long-term, continued learning and growth and understanding, because our bodies will continue changing.
Yes.
As much as we would like to say, weight maintenance, guess what? Your maintenance will shift.
Yes, 100%. Thank you. Because everyone's like, I hit my goal weight, I'm done. And I'm like, oh, no, sister, it's only the beginning, because you got to keep going. And guess what? Every 3 to 4 months, a new season of life changes and you have to learn to
That's
adapt
right.
and pay attention.
That's right.
You have to be intentional every single day. I did not lose 50 pounds and magically it stayed off. I am very purposeful on my choices, on what I do every day and why I do it. And I always look at my long-term health, like, hey, when I'm 80, I want to feel this way. And it's important of what I do today so that I feel great when I'm older. Like, I always think of today, I'm investing in my future health.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought that up, because it's so important to know. You should care about your health all the time. It's not Monday through Friday and you don't care on the weekends, or you don't care from October 31st to January 2nd.
Well, yeah. And how you care and how much you care about your health, it's okay if that shifts too. That's okay.
Yes. Thank you. It is important to know that. I think so many of us have this like restrictions and we're in this box and we have to do it this way, and it's take a deep breath.
Yeah.
You know, and we got to be more flexible. And like I said, I love our program because we're not cookie cutter coaches, and we don't have a one size fits all. And that's a game changer when you literally talking to your client about her being a perfectionist and finding other, you know, personality traits. Hey, let's dig into this. You have more than it's not just one story of you being a perfectionist. You have more going on. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's explore that. That is huge. And I guarantee you that, like, you just talking about it, I'm like, what a brilliant conversation. That is amazing. But she wouldn't have got that on her own, or looking up, you know, blogs or something like that. You purposefully talking to her and encouraging her and getting her new ways to think about herself. That's tools and skills she'll use forever. And that's what's so awesome about that.
And that's too what eating disorder treatment is all about too. There is no one size fits all, because every person is unique and different and has, you know, grown up with varied experiences, and the biological and the psychological and the social influences that, you know, they've been a part of are all so different. So it is about exploring their story, helping them rewrite their story by asking deeper questions and helping them to take risks in ways that they probably haven't before or had the support to.
Yeah. And I love how open and honest you are with just the whole outlook of everything, of what each disorder looks like. What, you know, for other people or for themselves, because some people, like I said, you were talking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had some issues after high school. Like, I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything to me, you know, like I didn't know. And I wish we were taught this in high school. I wish that.
Me too. Yep.
I mean, it would have saved me a lot of pain, a
Mhm.
lot of pain, not to go through all of that. But
I
just,
think,
oh, go ahead.
no, just that there is a lot more happening now with eating disorder awareness and helping individuals who may be suffering recognize, like, these behaviors are very dangerous. Even if you don't meet the diagnostic criteria for any one of these disorders, there's disordered eating.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know a lot of people who are engaged in disordered eating in the culture.
Yeah.
And yeah, anyway, yeah, awareness is key. Mm-hmm.
So here's my last question for you is, and this comes up a lot, and especially in our day and age, and in America, like I've been to other countries and they're more relaxed and just enjoy life and they take their, you come to America and it's like, boom, 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 gotta do this. And we're always on the go and there's more stress.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what age you are, whether you're in high school, graduated, have kids, older, running a business. I mean, everybody's busy, everybody. How can somebody take on stress a different path that doesn't include food or their, like, just their appetite or their food? What's an avenue or what's a suggestion or advice of, here's another perspective of how to look at stress?
Well, I think that first it's really important to recognize what's underneath the stress.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're believing needs to be accomplished or have done, or, you know, the ways in which we're going about it. Like, we do live in a culture that is all about, like, rugged individuality and just hustle. And you can sleep when you're dead. And
Yeah.
oh my God, Tanya, there are certain, I hate all of that. I really, really do, because we are not helping anyone by adopting those sorts of mindsets, adopting those sorts of mentality. We're running them into the ground. Their quality of life goes down the toilet.
Right.
And when we're in those sorts of, like, hyper vigilant state, you know, we're going to try to grasp and reach and cling to anything that will give us some amount of comfort. Mm-hmm. And food is very comforting, like, and there's nothing wrong with that. It can get to that abusive place, though, because we're not taking care of ourselves in other places. Namely, like you mentioned, being able to be with emotion and learn to understand that emotion is energy in our bodies, and it's telling us something is important to pay attention to. So we're flipping the script around what stress means, because it literally could be, instead of, oh my God, I need to run away from this stress, I need to get away from it, it shouldn't be here, to, oh, this seems to be happening a lot. Yeah. I wonder what that's about. Maybe I should say no to some things. Yes to other things that might be more in the service of my well-being and nourishment. Not sure I answered your question, but this is actually part of the conversation I had with the client I mentioned, is having a mindfulness practice, because we have, with our phones and with our computers and with this go productivity, always be busy, fill your schedule to the max culture that we live in. And oh, by the way, do everything perfectly and look beautiful at the same time, while you're not getting any sleep.
Yes.
That's realistic. Yeah. What we are creating is a mind that is scattered. Like, it's too much, cannot compute. It's like when I have 50 tabs open in my browser and I'm wondering why the heck my computer is operating so flippin' slow.
Your body works the same way. Exit out a few things. Say no.
Close some things down. We need a restart. And mindfulness. Okay, so part of the reason why we're having this mindfulness revolution. Why? Because everyone is maxed out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're figuring out, like, we need to find a way to slow down. We need to find a way to be without having to do all the flippin' time.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing, in relation to, since we're talking about food and eating, with this client that I'm working with specifically, she mentioned, she's like, bam, 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 go, 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 one thing to the next. And we talked about how, like, you don't want to bring the same energy you bring from this environment into this environment. Like, I don't want to bring the same energy that I bring to my workout to a conversation that I'm having with my partner. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? Or, yeah. So it's like, can we use cues in our environment to signal a breath and then say, okay, ask an intentional question. What energy do I want to bring to this next thing? It's like that restart. It's like the reset. Because we're being run by everything instead of us running everything.
And your question is so beautiful, and questions are powerful. Questions will lead you into different avenues. Your brain is very smart. You ask it a question, it'll give you an answer. So you better not ask what's wrong with me, because it will give you a beautiful list of what's wrong with you.
Questions are powerful, but we need to be very careful and intentional about what questions we ask.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I
love that you said that in that state of mind to ask such an intuitive question that's going to give you, because if you say what kind of energy you want to bring, well, I want to bring maybe peaceful energy.
Calm energy, relaxed energy,
compassionate
patient energy.
Yeah.
And that, my client, what she's doing is she is framing each meal as like calm, patient, compassionate advocate time. These meal times, because she has a lot on her plate in her life, and she has a lot of responsibilities to manage. She's learning to ask for help. That's something all of us could probably work on. But she's framing each meal with a 1 minute deep breathing.
Wow, good for her.
Have the meal, and then after 1 minute of deep breathing. It's awesome. Like we're intentionally moving into the meal in a specific way, and we're intentionally like getting some closure around it. So it's like, now I'll move into the next thing in an intentional way. And that's just helping her to break up that thing.
Yeah, most people, when they're done eating, they were so preoccupied with their phone or TV or whatever distractions, and the next question they ask, they don't even realize they ate, and they're like, what else can I eat? And I'm like, no, don't ask yourself that question. Your brain will remind you of that old donut in the closet, and it'll remind you to eat it. Like, don't ask yourself, what else can I eat? You know, because that's never good. That's how I gained 50 pounds, because I just kept going and going and going. Ask yourself different questions is important. But you really overall talked about stress in a very positive way of yes or no. Like, do I need to say no to a few things? Because if this keeps coming up and I'm being stressed, and then it's the effect is food, and that's how I'm handling it, maybe I need to look back at what's causing me to be stressed. Say no to a few things, or maybe saying yes to like a monthly massage or time for myself or whatever it is. I love that because like you said, it's like impressive if we're in this hustle mode, if we're constantly busy. But if it's affecting your health and your relationships, is it really
Time to
something?
take a look at it.
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's just
maybe just a little teeny look.
Just a little. Might help you just a tad. But no, I loved our conversation. I can talk to you all day.
I know, me too.
Because you break it down everything so beautifully, and it's easy to grasp, and you give such easy actionable steps of what to do or new avenues of looking at things differently, because we're so used to like laser focus. This is the way I've been living my life. This is how I have to continue going, or this is how society has taught me.
Right.
And it's so hard to look at a new perspective, but it isn't with support. It isn't when you have somebody in your corner cheering you on, keeping you focused. So any final thoughts or anything that you want to say before we wrap this up?
Oh, I just think that the last thing you said was really poignant, Tanya. You know, it isn't when you have support. And, you know, what we learn from our support team or support coach, whoever or therapist, whoever we're involved with, is, you know, we get to try on new ways of behaving with someone that we trust. And we get to take their words and implant them in our minds. And when we're no longer seeing them anymore or working with them anymore, we have them like walking around with us constantly, advocating for us.
I love that you said that. I'm not kidding. Almost every client's like, Tanya, you were in my brain the other day. Like, you just know. And I'm like, you're welcome.
Right.
And I repeat myself because I want to make sure that you get it, even though we're not in this conversation, you remember later on.
You know what I love is when a client will say my exact words, but it's like her idea. And I'm like, done. My job is done. Like, this is good.
Getting it. I love it.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love that. But I wanted to do this podcast because you took it in such a deeper level, and I love that you did that, and I knew you would. That's why I asked you to be on here. You did such a great job. But explaining eating disorders and letting everybody know that if you have one, it's okay. You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. There's hope. And I think that's something that's missing, is hope of things can be different, or even just that reality of, oh, wow, she listed this is what bulimia is, or anorexia, or binge eating. I have some of those. I deal with that, you know, and it's just being open with, it's okay. And I think when I finally had my come to Jesus moment, that's when life changed. When I'm like, you got to stop faking it. You got to stop pretending that you're perfect. You got to stop pretending that you got it all together, that you're strong. You've never been taught any of this. It's okay to ask for help. It's intimidating. It's scary. But I always recommend just talk to one person, like somebody that can help. Like you said, maybe just a therapist, or just one, coaching session with somebody, or talk to somebody who's been through, who's overcome it. Just have one conversation. Because all of us, we think we have to put in like 2 years of work. No, just have that one conversation, and it could lead on.
Start there.
But just start there. Start small.
Yeah, I agree.
And just know that there's hope. Like I said, I think people felt.
There's so much shame that we carry around when we're struggling with food, and we're so worried about weight or fat, or, these behaviors that we worry we're going to disappoint people, or we worry we're going to disappoint our coaches. I mean, how often have I heard that? Like, even if I've worked with an individual who has disordered eating for, a long time, and we've decided this is what you're going to practice this week. And, it happens. He or she doesn't want to tell me, like, this is what went wrong, doesn't want to disappoint me. It's tough. It's really tough. But what is Brene Brown? She says, shame lives in the dark. The antidote to shame is to bring it into the light. And that means telling the truth, being honest.
It's hard.
And and knowing that you aren't by yourself. And I think that's a lot of times why it's so difficult, is we think no one would understand, no one else is going through this like I am. And yeah, everyone's experience is different. However, there are a lot of people struggling with very similar issues.
Yeah, and from someone who's been there, it's okay. Really, like when you actually tell somebody, they're gonna be like so eager and so happy to help you and encourage you and give a, help you as much as they can and lead you into the right direction. Because if we don't get the help we need, we're just gonna stay stuck and we're just gonna be the same. For me, that was more painful, being the same person I am today.
Yeah.
Not improving. Like that for me was, that
Yeah.
was more painful than just giving a call and talking to somebody. I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. It's awful. Like it drains me from the moment I wake up to when I go to bed. Like it's awful. I don't want to be
consuming.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm 22. Like at that time, I'm supposed to be young and enjoying my life, and I'm miserable in my body and my actions and everything. So just giving that hope of it can get better and will get better if you get the support you need. You've got Kori here. Kori, she will help you out. She is so good. And everyone's like, what's this personality test that she's talking about? You want to take it with her? I will just lead them to you. They could break it down. Because that's also important. I just want to mention this. So many of us have this, maybe we have this like one idea of our identity. Like you said.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
And we lean on that, and we sometimes think of it as a negative way. And I'm like, oh no, like let's lean on that. That's a good quality to have. We just need to change a different perspective on how to implement that. But I'm like, you lean on that sucker. Like that is a good quality to have.
Absolutely. Any strength has the potential to become our biggest weakness too. It operates on a continuum. Like we get to decide where on that continuum it's going to land. Yeah.
But you can move it. It's not like a tree.
You can move it.
It's not just stuck there forever. You can move it. But I also like that you bring up other characteristics that people maybe not know about themselves, and to be like, hey, you have this. Now, like you said, we might need to move it. We might need to make it a little bit stronger and lean on it more. Pay attention to it. But it's there. You got it in you. Let it shine.
Yes.
Turn on the light. Let's go. So I love that. So if anybody is struggling with anything, just know that you're not alone. Know that you have support. There are so many people out there to help you. What was the organization?
NEDA, N-E-D-A, the National Eating Disorders Association. They're the Binge Eating Disorders Association too. There are a bunch. I can send them to you, Tanya, if you want to put them in the show notes.
I would love
but
to.
Also too, you do need to be careful as someone who loves someone who potentially might have an eating disorder. You want to approach them in a certain way. There are bad, harmful ways to do it, and there are better, more skillful ways to do it. So if you want me to send you a little thing on that too, Tanya, I can put that in the show notes as well.
It's such a touchy subject.
It is. It's very sensitive. The individual with eating disorder, they're incredibly uncomfortable already. And then to have someone potentially notice, and if you come at them in a way that is critical and judgmental, they're going to want to hide.
Yep. So I love that. I'll add that in there because that was something that somebody else had mentioned is how do I bring this up to so-and-so, because it is a sensitive topic. But I want to say thank you so much for being on here. Like I said, I could just talk to you forever.
Thank you, Tanya.
You're so insightful, and like I said, I love how you break everything down. So I hope this was helpful for those who know somebody who maybe is experiencing it as we're talking. You're like, oh, well, I actually have some of these qualities, and this is how you should handle stress, or just looking at different perspectives, hopefully open up your eyes, just a little bit of your health. We even talked about maintenance, which is really great, how it's always, you're always going to pay attention. There's not just like you hit your goal and you're done. Maintenance is a long-term game. I really say dieting is the easy part, like losing the weight. Okay. Like I get there's some skills there, but maintenance is a whole new skill that you have to apply the rest of your life. And I've mentioned this a lot, is no other program taught me that besides this one, is how do I keep paying attention and enjoy my life and create the body that I want, that I like, not what society says is attractive, but what makes me truly happy.
Yeah.
It's important. It's so, so important. Maybe that's another Zoom call or Zoom meeting or podcast.
How society likes to dictate what our bodies should look like.
Woo!
Yeah.
You better carve out 3 hours because we're going to dive into that. Oh my gosh, that fires me
It's
up.
at the heart of so much of the issues that individuals have. Yep.
Yeah. It's just, there's so much to talk about when it comes to health. It's not just meal plans and your workout program. There's so much more. And like you said, it's a lot of it's mental. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, feel free to share it with others and let them know that could be helpful to them. But thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it. Love it, love it, love it that you're here. Thank you, Corey. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Tanya. So awesome. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Definitely love to have you here on again. But thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.